Like with my designs, I always try and take out the base color. I never print black on black. All the black comes out of the design, and I purposely make sure the designs have enough of that coming through.
That's a really good tip. That is bloody gold, that.
Squeegee Ink Podcast, Season 2. This podcast is sponsored by Blind Maggot, Magna Colours, M&R, Target Transfers, and Adobe Creative Suite.
I'm Jack, and I run the brand Modern Streets. It's kind of inspired by punk rock culture, I guess is what I usually say, because since the age of 15, I've played in kind of pop punk, pop rock bands. And I've done that for 20 years on and off, just playing, writing original stuff, playing shows around the country. And I was, as a singer, because I never had any equipment, so to speak, the guys always lumbered me with the job of being in charge of like merch and stuff. And that's kind of my influence really is more from that than I guess from like fashion, so to speak. It's more because I've just played in bands and sold merch.
Yeah,
and that's
so
kind
just
of
lumbered you with it.
Yeah, so that's kind of the shortest term, I guess. There's probably a lot of influences over the years that have inspired me to give it a shot. But I think that's in a nutshell, that's probably what it kind of summarizes as.
Yeah, because like at one stage you would have probably called yourself a photographer, and then another time you'd call yourself a singer. Do you think just creative person is a better blanket term for someone like you?
Quite possibly, yeah. I've realized as I got older that just general things like certain ways of learning things, I definitely lean more towards the creative avenues for learning, like listening to like audiobooks while doing something else. I sort of digest that better. Just watching YouTube videos in a visual sense rather than being like classroom learning. I'm very much more of a hands-on and digest it a certain way that works for me. And I think creative outlets have always been something that I've been sort of drawn to through music and creation and just anything like that. Yeah, photography, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, I exactly the same as you, I think, with listening to the podcast and stuff like that. And then recently it's really just blown up, like the amount of stuff that you can ingest through just listening and like going on YouTube channels that are actually really high quality now and getting all that information. I think I don't know about you, but I'm a dyslexic person. So like what you're saying about in the classroom was really, So like, it's so much better when you're an adult and you're like, holy shit, I can learn so much better than other people and more quickly, and I can adapt and take on concepts because we're doing it visually probably. Yeah.
Really and I think I remember seeing a post, I can't remember who shared it. It might have even been Stephen Bartlett maybe. But someone had posted something that was showing things from over the years that have evolved. So like mobile phones, from telephones to smartphones to where they are now, computers to where they are now, automotive to where it is now. But then you look at a classroom and it's still rows of tables looking at a whiteboard. And even if that's and even regardless if that's a digital board or not, it's still that same format. It's hardly changed from single tables to double tables, whichever. It's hardly progressed in terms of the format, really. And like you said, you probably, like me, you discovered dyslexia later down the line because it was never picked up for me in school. It was always anything that where I had a bit more creative freedom. It always seemed to come out with the teacher speaking to my parents of, he just runs away with his imagination, and it's the mistakes are because of that. And then I went to college, and they go, right, we're going to do a test. And then they were like, nope, you got it. And then when I went to university, I didn't even mention it at university. And a tutor pulled me aside and said to me one day, he said, just so you know, have you been tested and you do know you're dyslexic? It's like, because I'm reading your essays and just the signs are all there. And I was like, yeah, I kind of know about it. And he was kind of like, oh, well, you can get X, Y, and Z, like extra time and extra this and extra that. And I think at the time, my outlook was always like, well, the world's not going to give me that once I'm in it.
Jack, so, can I stop you there? By the way, you do get like a shit ton of stuff for being dyslexic at uni.
I know.
There's like grants. You need to suck that in.
I missed out on that, to be fair. But it was, I guess at that point, they kind of, I'd seen it as like the ship has sailed, it's fine. And realistically looking back, I was like, oh man, I could have got a free MacBook.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. But I think if anything, it's kind of just inspired me to keep doing what I do best and chase the creative elements that I love the most. And, you know, thankfully, we now have smartphones and computers with autocorrect, and it kind of figured out like for me a little bit more. And yeah, it's going to do it that way.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you probably haven't, I don't know, but you probably haven't like actually put a spelling mistake on a hoodie. So who gives a shit? It's like not probably. Have you done that?
No, on a hoodie, but I printed flyers. I think it was like when I first started off, I got a lot. In fact, even the stickers I had originally for the boxes I was sending at the time had a spelling mistake on that. And I had to then, thankfully, it was just like it almost like a sticker on the box. So I actually ordered replacement stickers to go on the box, just so they weren't wasted, because I just felt it was so wasteful. But yeah, pretty bad at like flyers and things like that. I've had it where it's in there, and it's not super obvious, thankfully, because people probably never even read it anyway. But it is. Yeah. I've had a couple of times where it's in there. Yeah, it's in there.
Yeah. Okay, well, yeah, fair enough.
Thankfully, no printed products. Yeah, just like flyers and like the little bits. So
that you've noticed yet, because you do have a whole shop full of stuff. So, no, I'm sorry.
Yeah. To me, and that's the thing as well. Is like I don't even see it. Like I can read it and reread it, and I wouldn't even notice it.
Yeah,
that's kind of the issue. But yeah, someone else normally picks it up to me and goes like, "There's a spelling mistake there, you know that, don't you?" I'm like, "I do now."
Thanks. Yeah, but also when they call you on. Anyway, but I want to talk about your whole business model, because I've seen lots of people use like obviously screen printing in-house, and then I've seen the people be successful with DTG. But your approach to doing it and the way that you figured it out means that you can have like this vast collection of stuff, and then you're almost printing on demand. Can you tell us like the decisions you made to go down like your decoration route and like the advantages and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so I originally started off, I did about 2 months using the curse word of drop shipping my first lot of designs. And I just had this mindset of like, we're going to sell hundreds of thousands of things per year, and I won't have to lift a finger because someone else is going to do it all. And then that realization changed very quickly within a couple of months of sometimes just seeing an order sat there in the back end and it's like not fulfilled. And I'm like, why is this not being fulfilled? Like it's been 5 days, and just that anxious feeling. And having already ran like a relatively successful wedding photography business, I knew customer service was important. I worked in retail for Tesco Mobile for a good few years as well. So again, I learned a lot about customer service and what people value, and I guess the Amazon effect and all that sort of stuff of getting things instantly, which is a plague in itself. But, just that mindset of people shouldn't be waiting like 5 days for an order to be fulfilled. Realistically, it's nothing wrong with it. Don't get me wrong. It's just the way we're cultured now. But I was getting nervous about it. So I kind of just went onto the internet and I started researching different options. Because of DTG and its advantages in terms of the amount of colours you can print, I didn't really hold back with my designs and went a little bit over the top with them. So when I started getting some quotes for screen printing, it was like, it's not going to happen. I know. So I kind of was like, right, okay, well, that kind of gets rid of that option. Like, what else could I do? Could I just buy DTG? And again, that was still surprisingly wasn't coming down that much realistically. And I remember just stumbling, again, because of YouTube, our sort of latest educator, I discovered the direct to film through Supercolor, which is the company I use. I just sort of found some American channels talking about it and saying that it's relatively new and that it's, potentially as a potential game changer for certain people in certain industries. And I did a little bit of digging and discovered that they actually had just opened the UK sort of department. So it wasn't just in the States, because I was a bit worried about getting it all shipped over. So I got in touch with them and just ordered like a quick sample. And this was all during 2020 when the world stopped. And my wedding business effectively stopped for 18 months. So I had no real money coming through because all my weddings moved. We wasn't too sure whether we were going to get any money or not at the time. So I literally just went through the stuff that I had in excess to some extent, some of the little luxuries I had from my business, having like my main laptop and also like a very small laptop to take with me to weddings to back up to, so I could leave my main one at home. I was like, I probably don't need that. I could sell that and I could then buy a heat press. And I literally just went around and sold a bunch of stuff that I felt I could trim the fat a little bit to buy my first heat press. I bought in these, this first design, did a quick test print and instantly was like, right, I'm sold.
Yeah.
For me, like this is a low sort of equipment method to be able to fulfill things a lot quicker. But at the point then, because I'd somewhat established it online for the first 2 months and kind of out the gate, got a little bit busy with a lot of designs, I then realized I had to go and buy all those designs. So it was a kind of trip to the bank and said like, can I get a credit card? And that's literally what I did. I just got a credit card, did the first few designs and the first sort of like blank t-shirts that I needed. And just threw myself at that really. And as soon as orders were coming through, I was just like excited to go and fire it up and just start printing and stuff. And that was pretty much what threw me into that particular method, mainly because I couldn't afford a DTG printer for the love of money. I had nowhere to put screen printing equipment to that sort of caliber. I had no experience in screen printing other than ordering t-shirts from being in the band back in the day and getting the stuff screen printed. And literally the room I'm in now, kind of what I use as my office at the house is literally where I started printing the t-shirts from. And next to my desk, I just put a little rack with a heat press on and a tiny little set of drawers with some blank t-shirts. And that was it. That was all I needed to effectively get up and running, printing the designs that I sort of had and getting them out the door pretty much instantly, because it was like an order come through, I'd run upstairs and fire stuff up. And I was printing it and posting it. Like I was literally walking to the local post box and just dropping them in and being like, right, because a single t-shirt I could. I was like, oh, there we go, dispatched and done. And yeah, that's just kind of how I got momentum with it, really. And that's really why I kind of just went with that approach of using it. Similar to DTG, with the idea of I don't have to be sat on a bunch of pre-printed designs.
Yes, it's the imagery, isn't it, that kills people.
Yeah. And it was a great sort of like mediator, so to speak, because like when I looked into DTG and it was like, you need to pre-treat, so you need a machine for that potentially, unless you get a really expensive machine. The size of the machine, I was like, that's my office gone. Like it wouldn't fit in. And then most people were having to sort of want to pre-treat it, having to dry it, and they were using a heat press to dry it.
Yeah.
So I was like, there's two machines that I kind of don't need if I'm just using this method instead and just throwing it on, press, peel, repress, flip it over, front, back, and off we go, really.
Yeah. Has anyone, like, have any of your customers come in and like felt it and said anything? Like, are they aware of different print methods? Are they like, oh, what is this? Is this screen print, or are they getting confused by it, or do they just not bring it up at all?
Yeah, probably a little bit of confusion. I've had people when I've done shoots with them, I've assumed it was screen printed, and I've been like, no, it's not. And then people come into the shop and they sort of, I see them feeling it now. I've got the shop especially, and everything's out on the shelves. They can sort of feel it and stuff. And yeah, no issues whatsoever. Like I said, I've been using it since September 2020. I've had no one ever complain about the feel of it. I've had multiple return customers. Like my return customer rates are over 25%, I would say. And yeah, I've had people who, I can't remember what the company was, but a guy did buy one, I think out of curiosity. And he actually messaged me and said he was actually really surprised with the quality of it. I think there's a lot more sort of DTF companies now appearing, and I don't know what their quality is like in comparison to Supercolor, which is really the only ones that I've used, mainly because I prefer a hot peel, because I can, if anything does go wrong, I can sort of recover and repress, rather than cold peel, something's gone wrong, it's like, well, what am I going to kind of do now? So I kind of like that method of it, but there's a lot of stretch to it. The vibrancy is the one thing that gets sort of picked up on the most. People come in and they're sort of like so surprised by how vibrant it is, because obviously it does sit on the fabric slightly differently, I guess. But yeah, there's just pros and cons to every method, so to speak. But this just seemed to be the one that allowed me to print on demands, even though we now obviously in the shop run small quantities of everything in the shop. We still then replenish. So I'm never in the shop stood around. I'm constantly having to just replenish what's on the shelves, really. Yeah. And we just keep a small amount each time, 2 or 3 of certain designs on the shelf. And then once they start to run down, I just replenish and put back out.
Yeah, no, it seems really perfect, because we've got, our brand is Blind Maggot, and we've got basically a whole storage container there, and we've had to do 50 of every single design, and that's fine because it kind of keeps it fresh. Like once that design's sold out, then we replenish, but you do have to stock it, and it's not that affordable for brand new brands that are coming up. And they're going on YouTube and they're seeing like, oh, start your brand from nothing. And it's like, a little bit deceiving, because there's like £16,000 worth of stock in a container there. And then it's like, you have to put something into a brand to like kick it off and have that seed money. But it seems, I think what it is when screen printers especially say like, oh, transfers, and they're kind of a little bit anti it. I think it's because they're thinking back like 5-6 years when transfers were dog shit, when it was like they were printing them in house, like literally onto vinyl, and then cutting that vinyl out and putting it on. Yeah, they're not quite getting that Supercolor and DTF is so much better now. It seems to be working out for you though. So I'm enjoying it. How did you know like when to take it from? Like, how did you know to jump into the shop? Like, was there like a profit margin that you hit, or was there a turnover figure that you hit and you thought, right now I can really sustain this as a shop?
I mean, to be honest, like it grew from the office to a spare bedroom in the house, because I wanted to hold things like hoodies and some extra bits. And then I very quickly realized that when I started running things like Facebook ads and bits and pieces, and we were selling more because we were marketing more, that it was just taking over too much of the house. There was boxes everywhere. It was spilling into the sort of hallways and things, because to fold stuff, I was like, well, I don't have anywhere to fold, so I'm going to have to put a folding table in the hallway that I can fold down and move away. But because you were that busy, it never got folded down because it just was constantly in use. So I actually then moved it to a business park before I moved to the shop. I moved into like a little business park, and I got a slightly bigger office space there that allowed me again just to work and leave it once you shut the door a little bit more. But I think really like because where I am in Manchester, and I don't even know a place called Affleck, so I heard of Affleck's in Manchester. It's, imagine sort of like Camden Market, where you've got just everyone's like independent creatives. But it's more like in a kind of really quirky building in the northern quarter district of Manchester, which is already kind of known for being a lot of independent businesses. It's got a real skate sort of hipster coffee shops, cool bars, cool restaurants. There's bars which look like you're going into like a pawn shop on the outside, and you go in, it's actually a bar. There's shops that look like convenience stores, and then when you go in, it's actually a bar. There's even one which is like a laundrette, and you open the laundry door and you go down into a bar, but the actual bit you walk into looks like a laundrette. So there's really some quirky areas, and Affleck has been there now for 40 years, and it's evolved over those 40 years as being just sort of like more like a department store into like a real punk music place. Now I would say it's kind of like it's a real bit of everything. It's a real sort of like mixed bag of sort of like music influenced stuff. There's a lot of Pride stuff in there as well. There's like independent barbers. There's just all sorts of stuff. And it's somewhere I've visited for like 20 years. Since I was 15 and fell in love with music, it was just a place to go to buy all your alternative stuff. And I was in there doing some shopping, and I actually just saw one of the units being emptied. And it was mainly because I'd gone to Camden after watching a band play down there that I was like, oh, I love these stores. I love the idea of having a place. And that combined with just getting aggravated with like Facebook ads, I guess, as well.
Yeah.
And like how sort of volatile
how do you know?
they became.
Yeah, like, you're like, have you run some? And then it's like brilliant, and then the next one is exactly the same, and it just dies, and then you throw like 400 quid in it.
Absolutely.
You've got to tell me about that as well. But keep telling me about the shop.
So I think then seeing this unit being emptied, I literally rang them from outside the door of this unit that I could see had been emptied a few days before. And I rang them up and I was like, I'm still outside this unit. Like, what's the deal? Like, I'm interested. They said to me, just fill in this form and we'll get back to you. So I filled it in. I waited 2 days. I rang them again. And I was like, I filled the form in. I've not heard from anyone yet. And then the guy was like, well, we'll work through your stuff, this, that, and the other. And then I waited another day and I rang them back again. And I said, to be honest, I said, you might just be better putting me out my misery, because for all I know, I can't afford it. And I said, so rather than me just being this anxious child that can't wait, I was like, just give me a ballpark figure of roughly what the rent will be and what it includes. So he gave me this figure, which was he said, roughly this, it could be more as we sort of progress. He said, but it says roughly this, but it includes that's including your VAT. It also includes your utilities, so all your rates are included.
Really? Bloody hell.
So I was kind of like, okay. And it was probably about 4 times what I was paying for my business park place, which had a lot of scope to sort of grow into, and really sort of, you could have had a 2 or 3 person team in the room I was in for what I was paying. It was good. And that also included your rates. So you didn't mind like flicking everything on and just keeping it going. But yeah, I just kind of, like you said, because of the Facebook ads and just bits and pieces, I just kind of felt like, and having worked in retail, and don't get me wrong, I wanted to get out of it, but having worked in it and just having that sort of customer interaction and being able to talk about your brand and what you're passionate about, it kind of just made me realize that it might be worth trying it. And I would never know if it would or wouldn't work without doing it. And the only thing I could sort of reference from was I'd done like a tattoo tea party, like a tattoo convention in Manchester, and I'd done like a Comic-Con over in Liverpool, and had good response. It was nice. It was nice chatting to people, and people feel the products and see the products. And I was like, imagine we could do that, but from a shop permanently. Like, isn't that worth a try? And then not having to, be chasing Facebook algorithms all the time and all that other stuff. So yeah, that's kind of why I give it a punt. And so far it's been worthwhile.
Yeah, that rates thing, I know this is like a super boring business thing to talk about, but having your energy bills rolled into that lease must be a godsend at the moment, because my partner had a shop, and the electric was 700 quid a month or something, but that would probably be like well over $1.5 now for the same shop. It's insane. So that must. Did you have to sign up for a long lease, or were you able to like negotiate a relatively short one? It is
literally week by week.
Week by week.
I swear to you, it's week by week. So I'm tired. I'm not tired in at all. The only thing that I've sort of committed to was really kind of kitting the place out. So I took it upon myself to go in, rip all the old sort of vinyl flooring out, rip all the wallpaper out. I paid for new flooring. I painted the walls. My own family helped paint the walls. We painted the ceiling. I bought all the fixtures and fittings, but I had to put all that together. So I sort of guesstimated how big things had to be, all the poles I was ordering, all the fixtures and fittings, and just took a punt ordering those. And I had a friend who's another wedding photographer whose wedding I'd actually shot about 2 weeks before. And he was like, he's a really handy sort of handyman, and he was like, well, I'll come in and build you a counter and we can put a partition wall up. And he came in and we helped with that. So he just basically took payment in clothes, and it was kind of it was a real sort of like family and friends mucking sort of job, which was nice, because like my dad came and helped quite a bit with some of the painting. My daughter came and helped with some of the painting. So I know one of the reels I posted, there was like, you could see Shannon sort of painting, myself and my dad, and it's like 3 generations all in there,
That's really cool,
painting it up and stuff, which was nice. But yeah, it was, the rates and everything that are included in it, it's intentionally designed, Affleck, to just allow creative independence a space to be able to trade from without the pressures that you'd find elsewhere. And for them, you know, the general manager said to me, he said, you know, people leaving here, we said, we want them leaving because it's a success story. That's really when people say, oh, I'm going to leave because I'm moving on to, you know, better pastures. He said, that is anything, is what they champion. It's what they're about. They want people to be able to leave, not because the business is failing, but because they need actually a better, bigger space now. That they just can't offer it. But I kind of like where I'm at. I think, you know, I think there's a lot of tourism that comes through to Affleck because it's known as being this, like with Camden, it's known as being this sort of space to go and visit. But even just for the history aspect that I have myself going there since I was 15, I remember having tickets and having a meet and greet for Blink-182 when they were playing in Manchester, and just spending my day in the cafe upstairs like a nervous child before Christmas, trying to drink like a milkshake and just not being able to drink anything because I was so excited. And all them memories are all still part of Affleck's.
And you're making those memories for the next generation now when they visit your shop.
That's it. So, cool. Yeah, it's cool for people to come in and just be able to, you know, listen to the music that I have blasting in there and just sort of chat about the designs and just have a look around. So, it's good. Yeah. It's good.
What's the pizza thing? How's the pizza put into the logo, and why is that such a big part of it?
Yeah, I think it's just kind of like the whole, like with the pop punk thing especially, pizza's always just been the staple food for it. Whether people are like skating and then splitting a pizza, playing music and splitting a pizza, it was just kind of the staple food of that sort of genre, really. And I know when we would go on play shows and go on tour and stuff, it was sometimes just as easy to get like the largest pizza a takeaway would offer because you could split it between 2 or 3 of you quite easily. You could just throw it in the van and have it later. There was just all that sort of stuff that came with it. And it just kind of felt like, I don't know, just like a good sort of symbol for what the brand stands for as well, in terms of obviously like, I've got a poster in my shop that says, you know, you can't be racist, homophobic, and a few others, you know, I'm saying that you're punk because you can't. You know, punk is about the embodiment of being yourself, and you can't be that and say that's what I am, but not allow others to be the same. It's contradictory. And I just feel like pizza as well just comes in so many different flavors and styles like people do. And I think that kind of just what works as well. So yeah, I kind of just
bloody love pizza.
That and loving pizza is also a winner. But yeah, just because of also like what I just think pizza's sort of symbolic for. You can just sort of split it with people, and it's just like kind of like that feel good food that, you know, everyone can get stuck into.
Yeah, that's really cool. There's something really unique about you that a lot of other brands don't have, and it's the photography aspect. I know because you're a photographer, but it's like how much weight should people be putting on like their photography for the marketing? Because we don't do it at all because we're not really pushing that bit. But yeah, like how much, like I'm trying to split up your time. So say if you're releasing a new shirt, how much like focus do you put on the photography, the marketing, and all the different aspects of it?
Yeah, I mean, I've always treated any release, apart from the odd ones, usually like a musician in a band would release a single. Like it's that build up to it. It's the idea of building a bit of hype before the release of something. So before you release, you know, a collection or an album or something, you need to sort of do a little bit of legwork before it. And I think for me, having good promo photos is a selling point. It does help because it really allows people to see what it's like on someone. And there are things like placeit.com where you can just throw stuff onto any random people, but you're not really getting the embodiment of what your brand's about if you do that, because there's limitations to it. And everything that when you put it onto that stuff as well, it always looks like it's DTG because it just sinks into the fabric and just doesn't look as punchy as mine do. So I do think photography is something people should focus on. But obviously, if you're starting a brand and budget's a little bit sort of tighter, again, there's plenty of YouTube tutorials on shooting videos and photos with your phone that you can still look professional, you know, sticking to like the shade in daytime rather than direct sunlight where you're going to get harsh shadows and things like that. And I think there's little things, little tips and tricks people can do even with the phone to still make them look professional. There's enough sort of photo editing apps. There's even the Lightroom photo editing app that will allow you to sharpen things and remove bits and pieces if it's got a little sort of like bit of cotton that you've missed or whatever on this t-shirt. You can zap it out and things like that. But I do think it's a good way of, for me, it's a good way of sort of showcasing what your brand's about. So if you're a streetwear brand and you're doing like urban shoots, and if you're sort of more about surfing and that element, and yeah, doing it by the beach or in the sand dunes and things like that, it just reinforces to people finding you for the first time what your brand's about, really, and who it represents. So I do think photography has an element. It does have some importance to it.
Because am I right in thinking you had a blog? And sorry if I'm calling you on something that you said you might think about doing, but I think you said something like, I want to do a behind the scenes, like monthly thing at some point. Is that something, I know you're crazy busy and it's not a top priority, but like, do you think people want to see like that insight into like what the brand's about from your perspective like that?
I think brand owners especially do. I think brand owners like to, you can only look at like your Instagram stories and see who's watching, and it's a lot of brands watching other brands, which is great. You know, as long as they're doing it for the right reasons. But yeah, I know there's a brand called Unfinished Legacy. I don't know if you've seen the videos online. So Bremer, and I love his behind the scenes videos. But obviously there's a full crew of them and there's just me on my own. So it's just as much as I would love to do it. And I even bought this little, it's actually next to me here, this little DJI Pocket 2 camera, which is...
Oh, yeah. Is it a 360 camera thing?
It's not a 360, it's like a 20 mil super wide, like a GoPro, but it has a gimbal built in. So you can sort of just video yourself, or you can sort of spin it around the other way. And I got that with the intention of, one, doing more sort of video for marketing, but also to try and do some more behind the scenes things. But then I think at the same time, Instagram also then focused its attention to Reels. And obviously the format they're shot in, that doesn't really handle as well. Your phone does a better job of doing the whole 16:9 or 9:16 ratio for Reels, as opposed to they kind of then just dumped everything else and was like, we don't want to know about it. Like, give us Reels and nothing else. But I think YouTube especially is probably a place I would like to sort of dabble into, I think, in the future. Maybe it's something for next year. Once I know the shop's a bit more settled, I'd like to try and do some behind the scenes of photo shoots and just sort of like launching new products and just obviously shop life in general, really. Yeah.
So is the focus of that for selling more t-shirts, or is that for creating content for other brand owners? Because it sounds like it could be both.
Yeah, I guess it kind of could be. I think just like I said, drawing attention to the brand and what it's about and what it represents is always nice. And once the shop's in a position where it is sort of, I know it's going to survive and do what I want it to do, similar to sort of like the Unfinished Legacy videos, I'd love to be able to take the brand more than on the road, looking at different sort of like tattoo conventions and things like that, and just sort of different opportunities to try and do small pop-ups beyond the shop. To sort of take it on the road. And I think that's where YouTube videos, especially with sort of slightly bigger audience and bigger reach, and allows people to get a better understanding from what your brand's about in long form, so to speak. I know it's not super long form, but 10-minute videos as opposed to sort of 15 to 60 second sort of story posts. I think it just allows people to kind of get to know what the brand's about, and then if they want to then come and support, they have a sense of who you are and stuff. And I had a girl today at the shop turn up and like praise her for it. She dropped quite a bit of money. I kind of was like, I'm going to discount 20% for you, because she was spending a lot. But she'd said, I found you online, I've been watching your stories, and I saw you were opening the shop, and we've been meaning to come down, and we've finally been able to come over to Manchester to come and shop in person, as opposed to it being... And that's just from Instagram, let alone, the power of, like you said, going beyond that and doing more on YouTube and TikTok, should I say it, but it's not something I've really explored. I think I've got 3 posts on there at the most. But, there's opportunities to sort of get it in front of people. But it is spreading yourself onto as much as possible and finding the time to do it.
Yeah, 100%. And also, like, yeah, it's spreading yourself thinner and thinner. Like there's only a certain amount that you can do. Yeah, it is very difficult because all the platforms are changing and morphing all the time. Like even you just said TikTok. Now that's got like a Snapchat thing. It's got like disappearing stories, and you're like, I've just I did well on TikTok, then I plateaued, and now I can't be asked, and now it's got something new, and now it's got TikTok Live and YouTube. It's very, very intense, but also at the same time, there's a hell of a lot of opportunities for us. It's really interesting hearing you talk about like the in-person interactions, because I think once someone's had a conversation with you, you can't replicate that online because it's like so much more powerful. And then they're like, oh, I actually spoke to the guy who did it. And then they become your like champions around town, and they really promote you, don't they?
Absolutely. Because I know you guys do some pop-ups, don't you, and some shops and stuff with your brand and stuff. I love your setup as well. I always admire your rails and how you've done them all and stuff.
Oh, thanks.
It always looks really cool.
Yeah, no, it's something that I didn't realize, because when you change locations, then you're starting from nothing again.
Yeah.
And then the regular market that's every single month, we know almost for sure that this Sunday we're going to have a really good turnout. But that's just because of like putting in the work with the same audience and building it out, and having the conversations and things. No, it's really important. So would you, like, I know you said initially you'd say advice for new people, like someone starting right now today. What kind of money do you think like the minimum amount you'd have to like really set it off? Would you say just do one shirt and do pre-sale, or would you say launch with 5 shirts, or like what kind of mini business model would you suggest for people?
Oh, I mean, I liked the idea of starting with a few designs just because it kind of, to the initial onlooker, it seemed more established. And that was just my mindset of like, they go to your website, there's not just one product, which if it's a friend and family, that's not going to put them off because they know you. But if it's a complete stranger, they're going to be a little bit like, oh, what's going on? Now, the difference, I think, from that, I think if I was to, someone who's got the confidence, especially who's willing to go on TikTok and Instagram and all these different places, if they can document the journey of them building the brand up until something being released, could you get enough traction so that when you did launch a single product, people buy it because they follow the journey? Then fair enough. But again, you've got to have that confidence, editing skills, the bits and pieces that come with that to take people on that journey to get up to that point. And you hear stories about people doing it. It can be done. But again, it's like with bands breaking through and things like that, it's a small percentage of people that are able to pull it off. Yeah, it's hard to sometimes pull it off. Where, you know, could you, again, try the whole drop shipping approach and find ideally someone that's more local so you can have that interaction with them rather than someone hundreds of miles away? Could you have that interaction with them that they're able to fulfill the orders when they come through? And could you work off a model that, because you're working with a local DTG printer, could you then go into them and say, well, look, everything gets printed on a certain day because we let our orders build up to a point, and then we take them into the shop and say, here we go, these now need printing.
No, you're 100% right. Yeah. So if you're lucky enough to have a local DTG person to have that relationship with, but I think what you're saying is, if they're one of the enormous drop shipping people, it's not their fault, but they just don't give a shit about you.
No, exactly.
They just can't. They can't. No, and it's not possible. They're not doing it to spite you, but it's not going to be the same level of responsiveness and attention to detail with customer service. So, yeah. Yeah,
and I think as DTGs become relatively more popular, you don't have to probably travel as far to find someone that is printing with that method. And I think that, to me, is a good way of exploring design to see what sells. And again, because it's DTG, you're not really limited to what your designs can be. And then if you do find it works, then like you said, you can then tiptoe into other methods if it's better suited and whatever becomes most cost effective. You know, I know there's certain designs that I have which I've discontinued because they probably didn't work as well with direct to film because there wasn't enough like of a single base color to remove from the design. because that's something I like to, like with my designs, I always try and take out the base color. I never print black on black. All the black comes out of the design, and I purposely make sure the designs have enough of that coming through. But obviously, if you're starting a brand that's based around photorealistic pictures, it's always, if you're printing it large, it's going to feel more, like you said, like that. It's that feel. Yeah, it's that feel that people don't particularly like because it's too heavy.
That's a really good tip. That is bloody gold, that. So yeah, removing the base color of the garment to make it feel lighter. That's really interesting.
Yeah, so that's all my stuff is printed like that. And then I've ordered stuff before, and maybe I'm a bit carried away, ordered too many. It's turned up, I've printed it, I've put it on and gone, I don't like the way it feels. Yeah. And if I don't like the way it feels, my customers aren't having it. And it literally, I then went back to the drawing board, I tweaked the design, I removed a lot of colours, I changed elements to it, and I sent it for reprint, and now I sell it. But I wasn't happy with the original take because it just didn't feel, to me, it felt too heavy. And I know there's, again, pros and cons of that, where people are like, oh, but if I print the base colour, I can put it on a white garment or a black garment or whichever they want, which is true, but it doesn't feel half as good. I think my light's now flashing.
We're just raving together, isn't
it? It's like we're going into the Stranger Things, we're going into the Upside Down.
Yeah, but if I put my glasses on, I'm the inverse of you with our glasses as well.
Okay, there we go. Yeah,
I'll take mine off so that you're the cool one. There's so many avenues into it, but can we touch upon like the people on YouTube hyping up stuff that might not be real? Like, are there any ones that you suggest for people to watch who are like quite authentic and actually putting out content that isn't just like, hyping up young guys for making quick buck?
Yeah, I think if you're trying to sell clothes for making quick money, you're going to fail miserably. It doesn't really exist at all, to be honest. And even the idea of just, when you see like Teespring and all these other ones that pop up saying, it's super easy. You just put your designs on and let the money roll in. It's like, from where? Like, who sees it? Because, you can be the best of anything, but unless you market it to some extent, no one knows it exists. So no one's buying it. So I do follow the Unfinished Legacy videos. There's a couple of more of like the different screen printing ones I think I follow. There's like Big Brando, I think one of them, and there's a couple of others.
Brando. I've never heard
Big
of
Brando, yeah, he's on YouTube. He does a lot of stuff again with Supercolor. I think that's the guy I found Supercolor with, to be honest.
Super fan, that's what they call themselves, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, but there's a couple of different ones like that I follow. I think there's one called T-shirt Help Desk. I don't know if he posts as much as he used to, but he was one that was early on, was talking about Supercolor and different print methods. There's Hustle Ninjas, another guy over in the States again that sort of shows he sort of used to do a lot more of the drop shipping stuff himself on Etsy. So he was printing stuff for Etsy sales, but he sort of dabbles in and out of like setting up brands and how to market them and stuff. But yeah, I think realistically, it's kind of just
next year will be you
going for it. Yeah.
We're like, we have to see. There's this guy called Jack, and he actually has a shop, and he's actually did it since COVID. And it seems like you're much more established than you are, but probably because of the level of like the photography and stuff. Can we go back to like finding ambassadors and models, and whether you would have like not just models but brand ambassadors and affiliates, and are you thinking about anything like that?
I mean, in terms of people that I use, it genuinely is just me posting on stories and saying, who's free? anyone free for a shoot like this Saturday? Because I usually leave it till the last minute. A lot of it's that, to be honest. Like, I don't usually actively go messaging anyone to say, hey, you can model for me, because I don't know, as a 35-year-old guy messaging people, like, I don't know, I know from being a photographer, there's a lot of creeps who use having a camera as an excuse to ask people to dress down, and it's not something that I think is right a lot of the time. And obviously, if people are looking for photos and that's what they want to model, then that's fair enough. But there's a lot of people who use it for the wrong thing. So I've never
dark side of street photography.
Yeah, I mean, there used to be they still do it. There's a big photography show in Birmingham, and they have all the different brands come along and all the cameras. And they've phased it out now, but it used to be that you could always go and test these new cameras and these new lenses, but they'd always have some like young model with very little on to take pictures of. And it was like, why is that a thing? Like, like you don't really need that. You could just have someone there that's just dressed in anything, because the pictures are going to come out the exact same, regardless if they're wearing clothes or not. So yeah, I kind of don't really hound people for it. I very much just leave it to the masses to see who's available. And, you know, I'm happy for anyone to come along, to be honest. So anyone who's willing to, who's into the brand especially, then fair enough. I don't tend to have, if they're ambassadors by default, not where I've labeled them ambassador. They're just people that champion the brand, are happy to come and do it, and always get, you know, gifted with free stuff and make sure the travel's paid for and things. And they also want the photos as well, so I make sure that they get all the pictures and they can obviously share them. I don't ask people to tag me and stuff; they can just use them because they give me the time, and I ultimately need them, and they like to have them. So it's kind of a win-win for everyone. But I would probably look into doing ambassadors to some extent, but it's finding the right people. I think if anything, it would be me more sponsoring the right people.
Yeah.
So like musicians especially. Yeah. So like obviously because music's a big thing for me, like I don't mind sending stuff to musicians because I love listening to their music, and then them wearing the clothes, if anything, is more exciting for me. Not even just for marketing, just so I can be like, oh, this person's wearing my stuff. And
you've got like a reason to go to the gig and photograph it, and it feeds back into your brand because you're like got all these different things going on.
That's it.
That's really interesting how you could just layer in different skills like that. Yeah. So how long do you reckon like it takes to really establish a brand and like be like, because I had a little bit of I was holding back for a while of actually calling like Blind Maggot a brand. I was a bit like, is it a brand yet? Like, do you just come straight off the bat and say, this is my brand? Or was there a point when you went, right, I've kind of arrived?
I guess you kind of, you've got to really build a brand, haven't you? It's not something that happens overnight. And I'm well aware that people now are still 9 times out of 10 buy my clothes because they want the design, not this. Like this takes a lot longer to build than the back. The back's what sells it. This is just an added bonus where they go, oh, that's kind of cool. I can live with that. You know, they don't hate it. It's like, it's fine, but I love the back. And I think, but eventually that can change. And I think it's just a time thing, because I do sell now like bags with just a logo on, and there's some hats with just a logo on, and they'll sometimes sell the socks with just a logo on. You know, so it's kind of one of them things that over time people then recognize it as, oh, this is a brand, and this is what it represents, this is what it stands for. And I think that just takes time to do. And I think there are people like, if you're that kind of person that can champion your own brand yourself, you almost become part of what the product is, so to speak. So you've obviously got your products, but you are part of that. How you speak to people, what you're sharing, the music that you put to it, all that sort of stuff is what builds the brand, really. And I think that's it's really funny you saying about like that, because you've just got like logo tees, or have you got like shirts that just have a logo on it? Yes, there's just like one on the website.
But we had that on our stall, and for months and months and months no one ever bought it, but we had it there like just because. And then we were like always taking the piss out of it, saying, oh, this is our bestseller, are you sure we want to bring the bestseller on the market again? And then that day when someone bought it, we're like, holy shit, that one hasn't even got a design on it, it's just the logo. It's really funny. But I do find that a lot of new brands do just put their logo on, and then they like that's the one they're trying to sell. But that's not the one you sell first. It's like number 10 or 12 or even 15. Or is even just that filler piece for when someone wants something a bit more simple. But it's really interesting the way you've where you talk about that. But so can I ask one more question about
absolutely
being a photographer and then moving into this? Like,
yeah.
Did you have to, how much of your like personality did you put into your like photography business? And like, how did you differentiate yourself there? And are you bringing any of those skills into the brand? Or did they just hire you as your wedding photographer? Like, how much of that is?
Yeah, I think like I did a lot of wedding shows when it came to building my wedding business.
Oh,
so
right.
again, I was kind of, yes, I was marketing online, but I was also taking that particular business to the people as well. The same way I've now done that with the shop and with the pop-up events. I would go with a stand, and I had a custom built stand a friend made me. It's the same as my office desk. The same guy did it. Similar to what your sort of stall stuff looks like as well, with the kind of like the industrial poles and things. It had lights fastened to it, and it was just like special places for albums to sit on.
Oh, cool.
And I purposely made it look, again, like it was inviting and different to what everyone else was going for, which was usually just a 6-foot table with a white cloth thrown over and some albums and maybe an iPad or a TV with some pictures on. I purposely built something that was like in the room. I was like, what the hell is that? And it drew people in. So yeah, I've definitely took that element over throughout things, really. Just adding that personal touch to it that you think helps to draw people in. I think it's a big thing to add those little touches of yourself into stuff, like little bits of personality. Add that into what your brand's about, really. Yeah,
and build a nice, comfortable environment that you enjoyed visiting as a teenager. I love that. It's just come full circle. That's really, really cool.
That's it.
That's perfect.
I think I've kind of, over the years, from sort of the stuff you learned at university or didn't learn at university, and then working in retail, and the sort of things I learned from dealing with customers with problems and having to approach people in a phone shop and trying to work out what they want and what the needs are. And then playing in a band and trying to push that for years, and advertise that. And to the point where we would stand outside like club nights with flyers, and as people were leaving, give them out. We'd do the same with like, if a certain band was playing in Manchester, we'd drive over to the town, wait for everyone to pile out at the end, and there'd be 5 of us just there with flyers, like getting the name out. So we're not, you can't be scared of putting the work in, but all the different things that I've learned from one thing to the next, I've then just put into the latest thing that I'm doing. And then that's why I think for me building the brand, and people might think, oh, you've done quite relatively well out of the 2 years it's been running. Is like, well, it is, but there's 20 years of experience from pushing brands and working in retail and being at university, then starting a wedding business and going from 6 weddings a year to 60 plus weddings in a year to shoots is, it's that kind of process. And I've got constant learning, that constant driving. And literally on my desk in front of me, stuck to it, it says, if you stop pedaling, you stop moving. And that is literally what's in front of me every time I sit down. As a little reminder.
That is a bit of a stressful one. I don't think that would be my, that was quite scary. If you stop pedaling.
If you stop pedaling, you stop moving. It's just the idea that you can coast for so long, but eventually you'll lose momentum. And it's that, you'll see some brands and they won't post on social media for 2 or 3 months and then reappear again. It's like your momentum's potentially lost. Like the algorithm's going to tell you off for it, and people are going to wonder where you've been, and they're going to be like, oh, I'm not going to buy from them because it disappeared for 3 months. So I don't want to give them my money because I might not see anything. And I think it's just that kind of like, you've got to just keep things ticking over. Like even if it's just a little bit, but it's something. So.
And it's trust as well. Like I like had a instant thing with you because you literally showed your face, but there's brands who I've been following them for years and I still don't know who the face is behind it. And they're not even like appearing on podcasts and things like you are. And there's a lot to be said about like trust and personality, and that's probably going to be like the more long game approach to being successful. So it looks like you're not just in it for the quick buck because you're putting yourself out there.
Yeah, that's it. I do think, and again, going back to the whole brand building, you have got to be part of that brand, really. People need to see that you are part of that lifestyle. So like, people might not care that I'm going to a show later on, but I'm going to show it because it's a big influence of what my brand's about. So when I'm at a show, I want people to be like, oh, cool, he's gone watching, the Wonder Years last night. Oh, he's gone watching All Time Low next week. And he's going to Slam Dunk Festival. And when I go to the festival, I take some little slips. And if I see people wearing the brand, I give them a discount code there and then. I'm like, oh, thank you. And I give them a flyer with a discount code. Because again, it's being part of that culture. And that's what a brand is, I think, at the start.
Yeah.
When you look at the biggest brands that are out there, even like Nike and its influence on sports,
Yes. Have you read that book? Have you read that? Yes. Yeah. Oh, such a good one.
And even like the Vans one, I've done the Vans one. That's really good.
I haven't read that one. But you're saying about Nike, but was your point that he goes and visits the track events?
Yeah, that's it. And he was a runner and everything else that comes with that. It's what the brand's about. And I think if it's so easy to be sometimes like a tattoo inspired brand, but then not have any tattoos. It's very easy to do something like that. And it's kind of like, well, you kind of got to be of the culture to some extent for it to be authentic. And people can sometimes see through when it's not. And I think, there's some great books on that, like the Vans one. This Is Not a T-shirt by Bobby Hundred from the Hundreds.
Yes.
I love that one. Yeah. And just that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Where it's the people who have these success stories genuinely is because they champion what the brand's about as well, and they're passionate about it. Yeah,
it's so funny. You're probably going to get picked up by like pizza enthusiasts and just get dragged over here instead of like streetwear.
Yeah.
That's really funny. Thank you so much for all your time, and I can tell that you're not a football person because you're missing a match. Was that intentional?
Do you know what? I can just see with the highlights, and I'm happy with that.
You're watching it right here, aren't you?
No,
You've been watching it there and the whole time.
You'll be like watching, be like, oh, he's really passionate. He's really passionate about what he's talking about.
Loves it.
Yeah,
that's so funny. Thank you so much, Jack. You're so eloquent,
and pleasure.
You come across so well on social media and on this, obviously. So
thank you.
Yeah, I'm next, and I say next time I'm in Manchester, I'm hardly ever there, but I'm definitely going to make the pilgrimage like that girl up to the shop.
Yeah.
That sounds so
please,
fun.
Drop me a DM so I can make sure I'm in. And even if it's my day off, I'll make sure I head over. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
No, thanks for having me.